eating grain and dairy, not nearly enough time to adapt, hence the spate of gluten and lactose intolerance, according to the New York Observer. While most nutritionalists can get behind paleo's ban on processed foods and skepticism of our predominantly sedentary lifestyle, some scientists say BS on its idealization of the hunter-gatherer era. Evolutionary biologist Marlene Zook, author of Paleo Fantasy, challenges the idea that our ancestors got along swimmingly prior to agriculture and that it's been an evolutionary downhill slide since then. She terms this line of thinking paleo nostalgia, and she says it's more helpful and accurate to see that all organisms are constantly evolving. There has been no point in our past when we were perfectly adapted to our environment. It's all about what you can get away with and what gets results and what you can afford. Who can spare an average of more than $200 a month on CrossFit and shell out for grass-fed meat and organic produce? Eric Owings, founder of New York City's Mushin Mixed Martial Arts and all-around fitness expert, says that CrossFit appeals because they made exercise into a form of competition, into a sport. There's a whole generation of guys who were just exercising in gyms, reading Men's Fitness or whatever, looking for an outlet or community they could express themselves with. CrossFit gyms share an annual prom serving libations like hashtag kinda paleo lemon-based gin punch and plantain chips, with members busting a move amid a backdrop of kettlebells and medicine balls. Gym-wide 30-day paleo challenges encourage as much camaraderie as a round of sweaty high-fives amongst those who beat their PRs, personal records, this workout of the day. If you can afford it, that is, Ernie Costa, a 27-year-old finance guy, he said he couldn't. He got turned on to paleo and CrossFit a year and a half ago. Before his transformation, he says, I was always the typical meathead, would go into the gym and bench and do arms and go home and eat like 4 hamburgers. It was bad. When he saw an ad about a CrossFit membership for $100 a month with the first week free, he tried it out and fell in love with the gym atmosphere and the workouts, but nothing changed for him appearance-wise until one day, a paleo expert visiting the gym, a kid his age and an ex-Marine, and he figured, heck, I've been the fat kid since I was 12 years old. Nothing has changed in 15 years. He did the 30-day challenge and lost 25 to 30 pounds. He felt like a completely different person. But when he moved to New York in November 2013, he struggled to find a CrossFit gym for less than $275 a month. Coupled with New York City's high cost of living plus student loan debt, he quit CrossFit and since has quit paleo as well. I get home by 9. By the time I get home, all produce is either purchased or rotten. And he struggled to afford grass-fed and no GMO meat. He says, I can't remember the last time I ate red meat, and I love red meat. I can't barbecue anything here. I live in an apartment complex. Kettlebell Kitchen. Yes, a paleo-prepared meal service that delivers to CrossFit gyms throughout New York City aims to address the difficulty of keeping the diet in the city. The meals, which include wild salmon and sweet potato cakes, served with braised collard greens, marinated artichoke hearts, and cilantro lime aioli, go for around $10 to $13. Alina Smith, the playwright and author, is not what comes to mind when you think of the word tween. For starters, she's 34 years old, and her credentials include off-Broadway productions like The Bad Guys, as well as a stint writing for the last season of Aaron Sorkin's The Newsroom. But standing in front of an audience at Book Court, Smith transformed her usually confident voice to slope upward, the question mark lilt hinting at a voice of a generation, as Smith's fan Lena Dunham might put it, albeit one a smidge younger than her own. So it was a typical night down in Hobo Jungle. She began as she read from the fictional autobiography Tween Hobo, Off the Rails, based on her popular Twitter account. Smith's protagonist, a plucky, perpetually 12-year-old belieber, riding the rails in search of her brother, chronicles her vagrant lifestyle with the over-enthusiastic OMGs typically associated with kids who've grown up with ADHD medications in one hand and smartphones in the other. This also from New York Observer. Quote, me and Tin Cap Earl were doing our Dr. Pepper hand slap routine and sharing the edible parts of a rotten head of cabbage, Smith as tween read. Toothpick Frank was futzing with his Pinterest page, and a couple other guys just lay there slowly dying. This stage of Smith's career comes from somewhat inauspicious beginnings. Her first tweet arrived in late 2011. She wrote, sure as my bowl of mulligan stew, I'll meet those Jonas Brothers one fine day. This is both a confident start for the character and a reminder of how quickly dated everything becomes on the internet. The Jonas Brothers broke up in 2013. Well, she has now almost 14,000 Twitter followers, a fan base that most 12-year-olds would kill for. By contrast, her personal account only has 1,306. In addition to the book, Smith is currently working on a tween hobo TV project, which may or not be animated. Off the Rails is illustrated by Kate Harmer, a contributor to Hello Giggles. If you don't recognize that name, you're probably not a tween. Smith says, I had graduated from Yale Drama School. I had plays produced in London. I was living in Brooklyn. Nothing was adding up. And then I started tweeting for 1 month, and the actor and writer B. Novak started following me and talking about developing Tween Hobo into a show. Well, the stars aligned after interest from Mr. Novak, the Office star, who himself earned heavy literary credentials this year for his book of short stories called One More Thing. Smith soon found herself packing up, moving to L.A. She was on the West Coast with Novak, taking meetings about how best to market her Twitter persona. Not long after that, a Harvard poetry professor wrote about how the account was the first literary use of Twitter. And Alena Smith appeared on Variety's top 10 list of TV scribes to watch. Aw, tweens, they read such interesting things. Ah, gray matter. Something inside your head. And this particular magazine really tried to help it. Mental Floss, which launched out of a Duke dorm room back in 2000, in many ways anticipated the type of list-driven content that would eventually become popular on an internet that was not yet ubiquitous. This according to also the New York Observer. One day in the cafeteria, Will Pearson and I were sitting there and we said, what if there was a magazine that came to your doorstep every month and it was filled with all these great fascinating topics and you could just learn by skimming it, and it never talked down to you and it wasn't pedantic and it was just really approachable and smart, says co-founder Mangesh Hattikudur. Now, Hattikudur and Pearson couldn't find the magazine they wanted to read at the Durham Barnes & Noble. So, being sort of naive and cocky and 19 or so, or 20, they decided to start it themselves. 15 years on, the founders are all grown up and the magazine is going strong, expanding and increasing print frequency at a time when even successful media companies have cut back on print. Mental Floss has carved a niche in a crowded market by being offbeat. After the cafeteria conversation, the college students, unaware of a media climate that had recently killed splashy, expensive publications like George and Talk, decided to start a magazine. By the end of their senior year, the magazine had a small run on newsstands and a webby sensibility despite not having a website. Early stories with headlines like 25 album covers that changed everything and Gone with the Schwinn, how the bicycle emancipated women, and 4 terrifying theories in astronomy seem, in retrospect, to have anticipated current internet trends. This is going to sound kind of like Al Gore saying he invented the internet, but I really think in some ways Mental Floss reinvented the cultures of list. Editor-in-Chief Jason Collins says. The magazine, which tells stories that are easily converted to dinner party anecdotes, slowly developed a cult following, helped along by book deals with HarperCollins, board games, and t-shirts. By 2011, the magazine, then based in Mr. Pearson's hometown of Birmingham, Alabama, which I had the opportunity of not visiting his house, but of reading a Mental Floss issue while sitting in a coffee house in Birmingham, Alabama. In fact, in the former Dr. Pepper factory in Birmingham, Alabama. Yes, there's a coffee house there. Check it out when you're in Birmingham. The magazine had weathered a decade that took out a slew of bigger and more established publications. The colorful British magazine publisher and Maxim founder Felix Dennis, who passed away recently, was flipping through his flagship title, The Week, when he came across an ad for Mental Floss. The magazines had, unbeknownst to Dennis, done an ad trade. An angry Dennis, he opposed all ad trades, phoned Stephen Kotick, the president of The Week. Kotick sent his publisher some copies of Mental Floss. Dennis liked what he saw and summoned the magazine founders for a meeting. The first thing he said was, "I've got to say Mental Floss is the worst effing name in the history of publishing," Hedda Cooter recalled, but Dennis bought the magazine anyway. Couple of issues into the partnership, Hedda Cooter remembered the magazine put out what they thought was a more polished product. "We didn't really feel comfortable with it, but we thought this is what we're supposed to do," he said. Apparently, Dennis did not feel that way. "It looks like the effing suits have taken over your publication," the new owner said in a phone call, according to Hedda Cooter. "I didn't buy this because it was professional. I bought it because it was amateur." That phone call helped the magazine stay true to its original concept and execution that they had dreamed up as college kids. Meanwhile, the deal boosted the title's visibility and brought in ad dollars from luxury brands. Circulation at the time of the deal was 100,000 and has since increased to 160,000. Relocating to New York gave the magazine access to a stable of writers in the New York media scene. Mental Floss, which was bi-weekly when it was bought by The Week, will publish 10 issues in the coming year. It has expanded on the digital front as well, including a YouTube channel that recently hit 1 million subscribers. Partnering with John Green, the best-selling young adult author of The Fault in Our Stars, no doubt helped. And a popular Twitter feed. According to Pearson, the website now gets a respectable 11 to 12 million unique visitors per month. I'm dancing to Oingo Boingo all around the last place on Earth as we go outside of the last place on Earth, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, California, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast.
And here's today's podcast picture.
The picture was taken at Venice, not Venice Beach, but in Venice, California, where all the houses are on the water on these little canals, kind of like Venice, Italy, which is what Venice was originally created to emulate. And then it became this huge 70s crazy hippie alcove with people roller skating backwards and stinky people and lots of marijuana now. I used to go down there with my mom a lot. We had a lot of fun bicycling down there and roller skating. And there's a lot of sand, of course, because the beach is right there, and you get the sand in the ball bearings, because I had the ball bearing wheel roller skates. Nice. They jam up and stop, and then you've got shoes, and you're walking. Oh, those were fun times. So you can see that picture now at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com.
Mike, I just want to tell y'all that I want to go to San Francisco with y'all, and then we can go walk around, and you can pick up free newspapers that you'll steal for your show.
I give them credit. I give the newspapers credit that I steal stories from. I think it's fascinating, and I thank them for finding these stories. I did a little bit of man on the street finding interesting information and news today by going to the city and walking around and observing. And I observed that they've taken all the hearts. The little, they've got these heart sculptures. They've taken all the hearts out of Union Square.
Wow, Mark, that's a news story.
It's true, and I can verify it because I saw it, and I have a source that I'm using, which is myself. So usually they replace those with new hearts. I can't wait to find out what the new hearts will be in San Francisco.
That sounds a little bit disgusting, Mark.
Well, it's a painted heart. It's like the shape of a heart, and then they paint something on it. It's like the size of a public trash can.
Okay, that's great. You know, I can't wait till Shelley Shuhart starts that band that she was talking about.
Oh, that's right.